Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you all are staying safe through this storm. I saw in the comments somebody said they had just made it home from the school through the storm. I'm glad you made it home safely. This is Dr. Demita James, and we have Laura Sims with us again today, who is going to be providing us with the third topic of our social and emotional learning at home series. And today's topic is going to be de-escalating situations. So Laura is going to provide you with some helpful strategies that can be used at home or in the classroom. Um, and so I'm going to turn it over to Laura, and then I will wrap it up at the very end. All right, Laura, it's on you.
Thanks, Demita. Thanks, y'all, for joining us again. We're happy to be here with you today and just have another conversation about some of the uh, things that might be coming up now that you've been at home for a little while, or for those of you that may be still involved in some digital learning or virtual learning. When Dr. James and I were planning this session, we thought, inevitably at times when you're at home and everybody's cramped together and spending a lot of time together, there may be times when tempers flare, and we may need to pull out some strategies to help de-escalate those situations. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and just look at a couple of different things that if you remember and you can pull these tools out of your tool belt, they might help in a challenging situation. Last week when we spent some time together, we were talking about teaching, and we were talking about specifically teaching those expectations that you can have at home. And once you've all established and had your big family meeting, or if you're doing digital learning, when you've established expectations for digital learning, how are we going to move forward and teach those rules that line up with those expectations? We spent some time last week talking about that, and I thought that it was just really fitting. One of my fabulous district coordinators that I work with my work with PBIS, Jason Pinckney out in Houston County, was sharing with me that he had taught his little girl to ride her bike through this. Just, I guess it was in the last week or so. And because I remember last week when we were talking about teaching routines and rules and expectations, that was one of the examples that we gave when we were actually talking about teaching the explicit behavior that you want to see. I think we were talking about modeling and role playing, and I thought that was so neat. Jason shared a little video of him teaching his little girl to ride her bike. And I just thought that was a really neat real life example, just playing out of exactly what we were talking about. Looking for the next closest approximation to the behavior that you want to see, helping, talk her through what she needed to do to get herself propelled as she was learning to ride the bike, talking her through how to balance herself, what to do when you're about to lose your balance, how to put your foot down to catch, all of that. I'm sure that Jason had to think through all of that, and Jason probably had to model some of that, and he probably had to coach her along, because I'm sure that somewhere along the way she got frustrated. And so anyway, but thanks for letting me share that, because I just when Jason sent me that little video showing his little girl riding that bike, I thought, my goodness, you just lived last week's session about teaching, Jason Pinckney. So we're going to talk today about what happens when we get a little tense and things are kind of getting frustrated. We're basically looking now, and we're going to be talking specifically about when things are bubbling up and you feel like there's about to be some conflict, about to be some struggles that you need to get through. And I'm hoping that when we spend our time together today, that what we can do is just throw some strategies your way. When you start to feel that welling up, when you start to see those cues that let you know that there's some frustration building up, there's some anger, we want you to just kind of be able to dip into a tool belt to say, okay, this sounds familiar. I know how I can take a step back and de-escalate this situation, because ultimately this is really all about maintaining that healthy environment, because throughout everything, throughout the good times and the struggles, and you may not think it, but really, if you handle struggles and conflict productively and in a healthy way, you're going to strengthen relationships as you move forward. And all of these conversations that you have with young people and with small children about dealing with conflict, it really strengthens that social and emotional learning. You've just got to keep talking. You've got to keep teaching. So as we're moving through this, I kind of want you to challenge yourself, and I want you to think about a time when you were having a conflict. It could be a child of your own. It could be a child that you teach. And I want you to take a second. I want you to think about how you felt, because, well, it might be real easy for you to say, well, of course I felt mad or I felt angry. Well, I know when I really look inside myself, from being at GNETS for 23 years, I didn't always feel mad or angry when I saw conflict coming. Sometimes I felt nervous. Sometimes I felt anxious. Sometimes I was scared. And so there are a lot of different emotions that we can bring to this situation. So I want you to just take a second and just check and think about a time. And you can certainly share in the chat box. I'd love to hear, some of your comments. How are you feeling when you felt that tension, that conflict coming on? Because here we go. When it starts, when you start to feel it, you've got to be able to check yourself and think about where you are and be in tune with your own emotions and your own feelings. And you have to decide. It's kind of like there's a fork in the road. You can either make one of these two choices. You can either be a thermostat or you can be a thermometer. And I talk about this a lot when we do classroom management sessions, because there's a very distinct difference in the two. If you stop to think about the function of both, one of these is very much reactionary, and one is very much in control and in a more managed mindset. You need to challenge yourself to be a thermostat, because you need to regulate yourself. And if you regulate yourself, you are in turn regulating the environment. But if you slip into a thermostat mindset, you're just reacting. And if you're just reacting, then it's harder for you to get to a place where there can be some constructive dialogue or some decisions and tools and strategies used that can really promote growth and lead to a healthier outcome and a healthier relationship. So you got to check yourself, and you have to think about, what do I want to come out of this situation, and how am I about to regulate this right now? So, of course, there are going to be some different strategies that you might use with younger kids. Sometimes when little people feel overwhelmed by their environment, it's real easy for them just to stop and drop. They might shut down, might start pouting a little bit, because it's definitely the environment isn't giving them what they want. Might be a time for you to think about what you think might be causing this. You might want to dip a little bit of that into that functional behavioral assessment analysis. You're certainly, not going to do that in-depth functional behavioral assessment, but you can look at a kid sometimes and you can figure out, well, I'm thinking that might be an attempt to avoid something, or they want to get my attention, or they're really disappointed that they didn't get their way. And so with this little fella that we see, a little precious little, it looks like he's got a little Spider-Man outfit. Maybe he didn't get to do the next thing that he wanted to do. Maybe he didn't get to stop and get that ice cream along the way. There are some ways that you can de-escalate situations where you're not giving in, just stepping back and saying, you know what, I'm not going to feed into that behavior. I'm not going to reinforce what I'm seeing from you right now. I'm going to attend to you. I'm going to keep you safe, but I'm going to let you kind of work through this, and I'm not going to feed into and acknowledge and reinforce some of this negative behavior that I'm seeing from you. So just sometimes just distancing yourself and saying, no, when we make better choices, we'll talk about what we're doing next. We'll talk about our next stop. Um, a lot of times with young kids, you can really kind of get them off that thing that they were focused on and kind of redirect them. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. You're just interrupting that place where they got stuck. You're focusing them on something else that's productive and something that can get them to a place where they can process and problem solve with you and make better choices. One of the things that I remember Burl Adams used to tell me when she was our school psychologist at GNETS when I worked there, and she would always talk about how children, young people, they have to be at that place where they're ready to learn. And that's kind of like when we're talking about this, they have to be at a place where they can make better decisions. You can't get in there and wallow around in the conflict. You have to be able to step back and say, and I need to maintain my composure. I'm going to interrupt and redirect. I'm going to get you focused on something that's more productive. And then when we can have this conversation, or when I can give you that choice again, we'll go back and revisit that. And so it's not a give in. It's just, you're the adult. You're the one that's got more cards to play. So you can interrupt and redirect. And you always, especially if you have other children in the home, or if you've got other kids in a digital learning situation, looking and in the classrooms too, looking for the closest child that's doing what you want them to do. I mean, I know classic example is when you're in the classroom and you need for them to be quiet and focus on you, and maybe you've given your countdown and maybe you haven't quite gotten everybody engaged with you that you needed. Hey, saying, you know what, Hudson, I appreciate the fact that you're looking at me. You've got your eyes on me. That lets me know that you're ready for the next set of instructions. That immediately flips a switch with a lot of kids and says, I need to get centered here. I need to get on. And you're right. It helps you to avoid power struggles when you don't get wrapped up in this conflict. Instead of sitting in there and yelling over and over and over, I need you to come together, I need you to do this, or yelling louder to get their attention. That's one of the things we talk about in classroom management is attention getting signals and giving kids those cues. This is a time where I need for you to be focused. And when they're not exactly there, or they're disrupting your learning environment, absolutely focusing on what you do want to see if you have that in the home around you. Absolutely. And you're right. James, your parenting style will dictate the confrontational level. And that's just something that I think we're challenging people when we start talking about that thermostat and that thermometer, is to really do that self-check and think about, how can I take the parenting style that I have and make sure that it leaves me coming out of all of these situations with a healthy outcome, a healthy relationship intact. So I think that there are a lot of different parenting styles out there, and it's certainly lots of different things work for lots of different kids. So you just have to get your tool belt filled up with a whole lot of different ones that you can choose from, because sometimes what we find is that when we do get wrapped up in that conflict, we do get wrapped up in that argument. I remember, sometimes when I was in the classroom and those students would just start pushing buttons and get you going. Sometimes kids like that banter, sometimes, and not just kids, but people just like that banter. They like that back and forth, and they like that confrontational, challenging speak. And that's personally not my style. And getting in confrontational situations like that, where you do end up where you're arguing and bantering back and forth, there are some people who really enjoy that. And you, that's a moment where you have to self-check, and you have to say, you know what, I'm not going to get wrapped up in that with you, because again, one of the things that we've talked about, you really can't control the actions of another person, but you can control how you respond to the situation. So once you realize that you've been sucked into that argument, it's never too late to take a step back and say, whoa, you got me good on that one. You got me. And I was arguing with you, but you know what? I'm checking myself. I'm not going there with you, because then you're probably in that mode, you're in that conversation, and there's a specific reason that these slides are blue, because that's when you have to find your calm and happy place. Because what you would maybe be experiencing now is a lot of that argumentative speak. And you may get that with your little bitties. You're going to get it with those preteens. You're going to get it with those adolescents. And there are some strategies that you can use when you're trying to de-escalate that argumentative tone. One of them's empathy. It sounds like you're feeling frustrated right now. It sounds like you're angry. It sounds like you had a rough day. And you want to say those things, because when you empathize with someone, when you make that gesture to say, it really sounds like you're frustrated. You're trying to get to a place where you're on that plane with them, and you're telling them, it really sounds to me like you're struggling with something now. I want to help. And empathy definitely opens that door to a more productive conversation. And you're absolutely right. You can avoid confrontation. I like what Erica was just sharing, avoiding confrontation in front of other students. You want to state the behavior that you want them to do. You kind of want to move them in the direction that you want them to see. That you want them to demonstrate. Move them towards that behavior. If they've been yelling and they start to take a quieter tone, absolutely. I appreciate that you're lowering your voice. It's going to be easier for us to talk to now. Looking, just like Erica was saying, tell them what you need them to do, and then start giving them the reinforcement they need when they start to demonstrate that behavior. Because it's all about praising the closer approximations. And it's kind of like what we do in the classrooms. It's what you do at home when you're teaching, new behaviors or new skill sets. When they're getting close, you're reinforcing that. They're not going to be perfect right out of the gate, but when they move closer towards what they need to do to get it right, you want to show them that's the direction you need to go, not this way, but this way. You're getting closer. You're on the right path. It's like that little game you play with kids. You're getting warmer. You're getting warmer. This is the direction that I need you to go. So if you talk with them about, like, in the heat of it, like I would imagine when you're having a heated discussion with someone, one of the things that you can calmly, like think of the color blue, think of calm. The sooner we finish discussing this, the sooner you can go outside. No, you can't go out until we finish talking about it. So let's come back to a place where we can have a calm conversation, because I know you want to go outside and play. And the sooner we wrap this up, the sooner you can go outside. So absolutely. And all of these statements are going to resound better if they sound sincere, and not like they're canned, and not like you've rehearsed them. You have to sound empathetic. You have to sound like, I know you want to go outside. I know your friends are waiting for you outside, and I know you want to go. So if you can go ahead and have this conversation with me, then we'll make sure you get to go on outside. So absolutely, moving to their eye level, speaking calmly and respectfully. Reflective listening. I know if you've got siblings at home now, and usually they don't spend that 8 hours a day together that they are now. I know Caden and Hudson have been having a little bit of trouble getting along, and I actually had to say this to Caden not too long ago. I actually had to use reflective listening with him because I said, it sounds like you're frustrated because Hudson's making noises and he won't stop when you asked him to. And I'm sure you have all been riding down the road and had somebody in the back seat making noises and somebody asking him to stop. And, I get that. That tool, that reflective listening, again, acknowledges that frustration. And you know what? I hear what you're saying. I know you asked him to stop, and I know he didn't do it, and I know you're frustrated. And that, again, helps to de-escalate, helps to take the level down, and lets them know that you hear them, that you've heard what they're saying. They're frustrated. Hudson's getting on everybody's nerves right now because he won't stop making that squealing noise in the back seat that he just learned how to make with his vocal cords a couple of weeks ago. Pretty irritating. Yeah, and planned ignoring too. That's another great strategy. Y'all are doing a great job putting a lot of strategies up to share with everybody. And this is, again, I know you can do this. If I were working with Caden through this, being frustrated that Hudson's just intentionally irritating him, I know you can do this. I know you can deal with Hudson's frustrating behavior right now because you've been working really hard on getting along with your brother. It's a matter of really just acknowledging something good that has happened, some efforts that the child or the young person has made to move in a better direction. I know you've been working really hard on this. I know this is frustrating because you have been working so hard on it. You're right, Erica. Acknowledging the frustrations is really important. There's a lot going on right now, and there's a lot of frustrations out there. There's a lot of frustrations with the unknown and not knowing what the summer is going to look like, what the fall is going to look like. So we have to acknowledge that. So, one of the things, and these were just some helpful hints that I thought about including in here, because whereas all of these frustrations on back, all of those can be used with younger kids, older kids, there are some things sometimes that happen with older teenagers that sometimes you just may need to have on your radar. Not to say that these will all happen, but sometimes when you're dealing with an older teenager, you do need to kind of think about physical calm too, because I'm going to tell you, you all probably know this. Adolescents are really still struggling. A lot of that prefrontal cortex development hasn't happened yet. It's in the process of happening, but it hasn't come to fruition. It's not done yet, and so there are a lot of things that are going to be going on that they're going to have difficulty processing. So you may have some more volatile behavior, certainly nothing that you can't handle, but just something for you to think about. With adolescents, doesn't hurt to give them some physical space. You really want to pay attention to your body language, and you want to make sure that you're not in a confrontational stance. You just kind of want to relax your body, and it's okay to shut down for just a second. And when I say shut down, I just mean go to a quiet place in your head, because you know what? You want to kind of think of a go-to statement right here, because sometimes when you're in that heavy conflict and that banter is going on and on and on and back and forth, and they're wanting to argue, they're wanting to get you sucked up into that verbal altercation. They actually, this is a strategy that they use in Love and Logic. They call it your go-to, and they say, in the heat of that moment, you just have your statement that you go to. It might be, I know, I know you're frustrated. I know what. Think about what your go-to statement. You know what? I respect you too much to argue right now. I love you too much to raise my voice and argue with you right now. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for you. and I'll be able to listen to you when your voice is calm. Sometimes, if you do the pre work, if you think ahead and you say, if you've been in some challenging conversations with your teen and you find yourself getting wrapped up in those verbal altercations, go ahead and think about it. What's going to be your go to statement? What's going to be the thing you're going to say when you're in the heat of that moment? Go ahead and have it. So when you see it escalating, and you have to look around, make sure that everything's calm and copacetic, that you're in a good space, you've checked your body language, shut your brain down for a second and say, you know what? Go ahead and have it. I respect you too much to argue. And you can keep saying it in a genuine, empathetic way, and then they'll know nothing much here is going to change until I de-escalate myself. And you're in effect calming the conversation right then. And as they start to de-escalate, you can reinforce those approximations. Thank you for lowering your voice. Thank you for sitting down. Let them talk about what's going on. Let them get it out. It's going to be very difficult. They're going to feel it may not come out very smoothly. It may come out with some inappropriate language, but let them get it out, and give them some feedback. I hear what you're saying. That's got to be frustrating. I just can't imagine how that must feel. That would be a great time. If you see that they're moving in a direction where they're trying to calm themselves, throw out some other suggestions about calming. Let's take a few deep breaths together. Let's breathe deeply together for a few minutes. Wow, we just had a big blow up. Let's just take a second. Let's talk about this. What can we do to help you work through this? What can we do to make this better? And then when it's over, you've got to remember that you always want to loop back around and give that positive attention. You got to loop back around, and you've got to let that child know that healthy relationship is still intact. Conflict is a part of relationships, and there has to be closure, and there has to be a coming together and saying, we just had us a difficult conversation, but you know what? We made it through that, and we did a great job. And I'm proud of you for calming yourself. I'm proud of you for being able to talk to me the way you did. And I know you got frustrated, but man, you pulled it back together. And then take that opportunity to reteach right then. Teach what you needed to see before everything blew up. What was the behavior that was the challenge? Try to go back and say, what can we do next time this situation comes up? How can we handle it differently? Because I want to give you the tools to deal with this conflict when it arises again. Because they're in a safe place when they're with you, but you want to help them learn how to deal with conflict when they're away from you as a parent or a teacher. When they're out in society, they have to learn how to be able to check themselves and de-escalate themselves, because not everybody out there that they're going to encounter in their world is going to be able to coach them through this. So, and you as the adults, make sure that you're checking in with yourself. After a big blow up like this, you may want to take some time and go and sit and do some deep breathing yourself. There may be a close friend or your spouse that you may want to talk with about it and just kind of debrief it. And you really should, because you need to take care of yourself, because you can't help your child or your student grow if you're not taking care of yourself and looking after your own self-care. So making sure that your family is responding consistently and making sure that you're all aware of the challenges that you're having and how can we all come together to respond the same way. And we want to respond out of kindness and compassion, because there's a lot of hurt right now, and we're not always going to know what that hurt is. But if we always approach it from a place of kindness and compassion, then we're that much better off. And you're going to come through the other side with a healthy relationship intact, where both parties can grow, because conflict doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It's an opportunity to grow. So thank you all for being a part of today's session. I really appreciate all of your feedback. You have all put some really really great ideas over here. The listening without interrupting, active listening is so critical when all of this is happening. I mean, you have absolutely, they've got to know that you're listening. They got to know that you're hearing what they're saying, and you got to put all of the attention on them so that they can work through it, and they can know that you're the focus right then and there is them, and helping them to get through it. Absolutely. Yeah. And I like that somebody mentioned, I think what you're referring to is making sure that we put a lot of deposits in kids' accounts, because it sure is a lot easier to deal with conflict when you've got a lot of positive experiences to build on. It makes conflict that much easier because kids know they're in a safe place, because you have so built up that bank account with all those good memories and all those good teaching experiences, that when there's that conflict, they feel safe with you, and they feel like it's safe to be there with you, because you have so many more deposits in that account than withdrawals, that when it happens, they know they'll be safe and they can work through it with you. I really appreciate you mentioning that. That is such an important part of building healthy relationships. Deep breathing exercises, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of those great calming techniques that you can use when you're in the heat of the moment and both of you need to take a deep breath. Absolutely. Do it together. Say, whoo, we need to take a deep breath right now. We got a little hot there for a minute, didn't we? Let's take a deep breath, and let's all come back together. So thank you for letting me be a part of this today. Dr. James, I appreciate you putting this whole series together. Dr. James has worked real hard to put something together to support everyone and help everybody expand their social and emotional learning. And, absolutely, you need to take a deep breath, and you need to step back too, because conflict is challenging. It's challenging for the adults as well as the children. And you just got to maintain your cool. And after it's all over with, go sit on the front porch, pour you a glass of tea, and sit there and talk to somebody about it. Pick up the phone and call somebody, debrief about it, because that's a part of the self-care is talking through it, But anyway, so thanks, y'all. Thank you so much for being a part today of everything.
And Laura has given us a great segue into next week. So we're going to focus more on that self-care piece with me. And we are going to look at some mindfulness techniques, which some of you have already kind of shared that with us, as far as some breathing and all of that, which is a huge component. So make sure you check back in with us next week as we go through the last part of our webinar series, which is mindfulness and self-care. And find you a nice, comfortable position to be in when we go through this next week. So if you're in your office somewhere, you might want to close the door so that you're not disturbing your neighbors, or invite them to come and share it with you.
Do I need to get my yoga mat out next week, Dr.
You
James?
can if you want to. I mean, but we can do it in a chair too. So So yes, we will see you all next week, and thank y'all once again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Y'all be safe out there. Stay safe and stay well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.